Hi, this is Revive Nutrition Coach Gina Solorzano, and this is a copy of our recording of our April 21st, 2026 protein meeting. Our focus is how can I eat to meet my protein needs? So today we will discuss macronutrients, protein's function, protein requirements, high and low protein risks, how much protein you specifically need, clean high protein foods, and some breakfast examples. So, first of all, what are the essential macronutrients? So, these are carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and also water. These are the things that we can't produce on our own and that we need in large quantities to take in. So, today we'll be focusing on proteins. In past episodes, we did cover carbs and fats. So, reach out to me if you'd like a copy of either of those presentations. So, first of all, briefly, why does our body need protein? So, some reasons are muscle protein synthesis. So, it's creating new muscle and kind of maintaining the muscle that we already have, increased satiety or feeling of fullness, appetite control, muscle repair, hormone production, enzyme function, and also supporting our immune system. Right, so an important thing I wanted to go over is appetite control with protein. So it's really important to eat high protein foods, especially a high protein breakfast, for the following reasons. So one thing is it suppresses ghrelin, which is kind of known as the hunger hormone. So if you eat a high protein meal, you'll feel much more satisfied and you won't still feel hungry and feel like you need to eat more quickly. And that will happen if you do have something like cereal for breakfast instead of a high protein breakfast. You won't feel full very long and you're actually still going to experience that hunger. So make sure that you always include lots of protein, especially at the beginning of the day. Another thing too is it also triggers release of natural GLP-1. So that's what a lot of people are taking in pills and injections if you think of like Ozempic or Zepbound or something like that. But we do naturally produce GLP-1 and eating a lot of protein can help us to do that. And that also signals to our body that we're full and that we don't need to eat anymore. And then lastly, it changes our insulin response too. So it slows the blood sugar spike. And especially if we're eating a lot of carbohydrate, you definitely want to have a lot of protein with that too to keep your blood sugar from spiking too much. So I always tell people like to pair it up with a protein. For example, if you want to eat a banana, don't just eat a banana, but have the banana with a protein source, like maybe a little bit of Greek yogurt or some cottage cheese or even peanut butter, something like that to slow the insulin response. All right, so are you getting enough protein? Now, people that are overeating are probably getting enough protein. They're probably getting enough of everything, more than enough of everything. But it's often the people who are dieting or restricting calories that don't get enough protein and that have a deficiency. So if you've been watching what you're eating and you're trying to eat less, this could be you. And a lot of the clients I work with aren't getting enough protein. So another thing to consider too is if you're an older adult, you aren't as efficient in processing protein. So you actually need a little bit more to make sure that your body absorbs all of it that's needed. And one last thing too about this, exercise does create a higher demand for protein, especially if you're strength training. So you definitely want to take in some extra protein if you're working out. So, are there risks associated with excess protein? For most people, I would say no. But if you do have a kidney issue, which if you go for, regular blood work, your doctor would let you know about that. But if you did have some kind of a kidney issue, it could be harmful to overconsume protein. But unless your doctor's told you that that's the case, you definitely don't have any limitation on how much you can have. And feel free to have as much as you need. The more, the better if you're trying to put on muscle. And then, especially too, like I was saying, if you're an older adult, you might want to try to consume some extra protein beyond what we'll talk about for your intake level today. Now, one thing to keep in mind though, intake over about 55 grams at one time can't be fully utilized. So there's nothing really wrong with taking in more than 55 grams, but it's not really going to give you much more benefit than if you just stopped at 55 grams. And this would be for one meal. So what I'm saying is you want to space the protein out over several different meals throughout the day. We don't want to just have one massive protein feeding where we try to take in 100 grams of protein at one time. And the reason for that, it's very similar to SPF if you think about sunscreen. So you've probably heard before that I forget, I should have looked it up. Maybe 50 is really the highest that's effective. And when you go beyond SPF 50 in sunblock, it's kind of like you're just paying for nothing extra, like 75 or 80 or 90 doesn't really have any more of an effect than SPF 50 would have. So with protein, it is kind of the same thing. Once you get over about 55 grams, if you had 75 grams, 85 grams, that's not really going to give you any more muscle protein synthesis than if you had just stopped at 55 grams. And the reason is the graph, if you think about it, would be an exponential curve. So once you get to about 55, it's very, very minute, not even negligible to the effect that it would have. So you really don't want to try consciously to get more than 55 grams at one feeding. But that's why we want to spread it out throughout the course of the day. Okay, but it's not harmful. It's just not really going to benefit you the way that you think it might if you try to pack it all on at once, like 100 grams in one meal. So the last thing I have up here is gradually increase the amount to reach your goal. So start with a smaller amount of protein, or maybe just increasing the protein for one meal. And I would definitely recommend breakfast. Start with a big breakfast and work on that. And then from there, you can try to build up to a higher protein lunch, higher protein dinner. And if you don't do that, there could be some gastrointestinal issues or digestive issues. So we want to just be careful to gradually increase that. And as far as risks associated with not enough protein, the big thing would be that if you're not providing your body with enough protein, you certainly can't put on muscle and you're not going to have the protein that's needed to even maintain your current muscle. Your body will start eating away at that muscle for the protein that it needs, and you could experience muscle loss. So that's something that's really important to avoid. So we want to make sure that we get enough protein. So now let's talk about what that would look like. So the best way to figure out how much protein you need would be to eat 1 gram per pound of lean body mass. Now, if you're a Revive client and you've done an in-body scan, we can look at that and we can tell you exactly what your lean body mass is. So just for example, let's say that a person weighed 100 pounds and they're where was I going with that? Well, let's say that you were okay, maybe you were only 10% body fat and you weigh 100 pounds. That means 90 of the pounds is your lean body mass. So, I just for example, that would be what that would look like. But we can see your in-body scan and we'll be able to tell you what your lean body mass is. So, it's something below what your actual weight is. Now, if we have no idea what that is because you can't do a body scan for whatever reason, or maybe you don't live around here or you don't have access to a body scan, what we can use is we can do 0.7 grams per pound of your desired body weight. Okay, so you're going to take 0.7, multiply that by your desired body weight. And this is what that would look like. I have an example up here. So let's say we have Susie. She weighs 155 pounds. She would like to lose weight, and her desired body weight is just 143 pounds. So to figure out how much protein she should consume, she could do 0.7 times 143, and that would give her an answer of 100. So that's 100 grams of protein would be her minimum daily protein consumption. And like we said before, there's nothing wrong with going over that. If she happens to eat 120, great. Especially if she's working out, that might help her to put on some extra muscle. Okay, but that's a rule of thumb you can use if you don't have your in-body scan. If you are a client and you have an in-body scan, just ask us to see it and we can tell you what that lean mass is, and that will give you a better idea of what you should be eating for protein. Okay, or you can use this, so 0.7 times your desired body weight. That's how many grams of protein you should aim for at a minimum on a daily basis. Okay, so like we talked about before, we do want to spread this evenly over about 3 or 4 meals for maximum benefit. If you only eat once or twice, you run into that problem like what we talked about with more than 55 grams not really being put toward muscle protein synthesis. So if you only eat 1 or 2 meals, that's probably going to be an issue. We want to try to spread the protein intake evenly, or maybe a little bit heavier on the breakfast over 3 or 4 different meals to get the maximum benefit. And then it's also true that if you eat too many times with protein and you're breaking it up into too small of pieces, that's not going to be as effective too. So, for example, if you ate 7 times a day and you had just maybe 12 grams of protein in each of your 7 meals, that's not very efficient either because you need a large quantity of protein to maximize your muscle protein synthesis. So we do want to kind of aim for 3 or 4 different protein feedings throughout the day. So, for example, with our Susie, let's say she's trying to go for 100 grams of protein. So she could try to do four different times, like a breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack, maybe, where she's getting about 25 grams each time. Or she could just do like a breakfast, lunch, dinner, where it's 33 grams each time. Those would both be two ways to get her to the 100 grams protein goal. Okay, so this I really wanted to talk about too. What high protein foods should you be avoiding? So there are a lot of protein products out there right now. It's very trendy right now. If you walk through the grocery store, there's like protein Pop-Tarts and protein Cheerios and protein waffles and protein coffee, I think, and all kinds of stuff. So we want to avoid that type of product where it's a protein product where they've added a bunch of protein to it and it has a bunch of mysterious ingredients. It still is ultra processed food. We definitely want to avoid that. That still increases our risk for cancer, heart disease, diabetes. It's really dangerous for us for many reasons. So we want to stay away from that ultra processed food and we want to try to eat real natural food. And we'll talk about a bunch of examples of what that would look like. But just focus on eating something where it's a chicken breast or it's a piece of cheese or it's rice, things like that, where it's a whole food, where it's something that you could find in nature. That's kind of the rule of thumb for that. Think about if it's something that you could naturally come across, or, not that the chicken, you would have to prepare the chicken, for example, but something that you could find in nature versus something that took machinery and took a lot of artificial ingredients to produce. So those are the things we want to stay away from. And then with meats specifically, make sure that you're staying away from processed meats. So that would be things like hot dogs or sausages or bratwurst or even deli meats too. If you do really feel like you can't get away from deli meat, definitely buy organic and buy a low sodium version too. That's certainly more healthy. Than if you just buy anything off the shelf. So organic, low sodium, but really it's best to stay away from that. Instead, see if you could actually grill up a piece of chicken at home or bake a piece of fish, something like that. And then also anything with added sugars and artificial sweeteners. So that would be a lot of like protein bar or Pop Tart or cookie type products like that. That stuff's going to have a lot of either added sugar or just artificial added sweetener too to get it to taste sweet. Some of them are just really glorified candy bars and they've got a lot of junk in them that we really need to avoid. So I would much rather you have a big healthy breakfast with eggs and egg whites than having like a protein Pop Tart. So definitely keep that in mind that you're trying to stay away from ultra processed food, but just steer yourself toward that good natural food that our bodies are meant to be eating. And then also too, because a lot of meats have this, stay away from high quantities of saturated fats. The rule for saturated fat is we don't really want it to be more than 10% of our overall calories for the day. So if you're eating a lot of red meat, then you're probably not going to be able to keep within that 10%. I would recommend that you don't have red meat more than twice a week at maximum. So just kind of limit it to one or two times a week that you're going to eat that. And eggs have saturated fat too, but it's very little. If you have several eggs, that's still only a few grams. I think each egg is about 1.5 grams of saturated fat. So that's not too much of an issue, but it would be found more in the fatty meats. So just be careful about that and make sure that you're buying a lean meat whenever you do buy meat. And that's what I wanted to talk about too, since we're discussing eggs. And I will give you some examples of high protein breakfasts, and a lot of them include eggs too. So a lot of people still think that eggs are an issue for cholesterol, and that's not true at all. So what's actually an issue for cholesterol is when we eat diets that are too high in saturated fat, which is what I just said is more than 10% saturated fat. Trans fats also, which would be found in fried foods, and then refined sugars, fried foods, ultra processed foods. So eating lots of those things is what's causing our cholesterol to rise. And the reason is that because we're metabolically unhealthy, our liver is what's overproducing the cholesterol. So it's not so much the cholesterol found in the food that you're eating, it's when you're eating a really junk food, saturated fat, ultra processed food diet, then you're metabolically unhealthy, you're overproducing cholesterol. That's why your cholesterol is high. So please don't be afraid of eggs. And we'll, like I said, we'll go over lots of examples in a minute where we use eggs as a good high protein breakfast. But don't be afraid of the eggs. It's not the eggs, it's that you're not eating a clean diet. So we want to clean up your diet, eat lots of whole foods, and then you'll be able to enjoy those eggs. Okay. So this is something, if you want to take a screenshot of it, lots of examples of whole foods you could eat that are healthy, that have plenty of protein. So I put what I thought would be probably a quantity you might have. You might have more or less than that. So of course you can adjust it. But for example, if you had almond butter, 2 tablespoons of it, it has 7 grams of protein. So this shows us lots of different things we could be eating. Like I said, if you want to take a screenshot of this, you'll be able to access that. And what I do is I could kind of suggest to you as a client to build your meal based on the protein. So try to look for a way that you can get your 30 grams of protein or whatever it need be, just kind of based off of these foods that you see here. And then after you've got that, you want to add in some healthy fruits and vegetables, or maybe like a healthy starch, like having some rice or some whole grain bread or quinoa, something like that. And some of those things actually, like I have quinoa in here, that can actually be kind of high in protein too. So that might be a good thing to include in like a lunch or a dinner as well. But take a look at this. This should give you some ideas for ways that you can add some of these foods to your meals to increase your protein. And what I'd like you to start with is definitely working on your breakfast first. So try to construct a breakfast that would work for you, that would be enough grams of protein based on your own needs. Now, most people do need probably, I would say, at least 30 grams at breakfast. It's really important to get a good high protein breakfast every day. So if you think about that, I'll show you some examples in a minute. But here's an egg right here. One large egg is about 6 grams of protein. And I like to pair that up with egg whites too. So maybe you're having some egg whites and then a couple of eggs. So that would get you right there to 22 grams of protein. And you could throw in some vegetables or some spinach, something like that. And then maybe some kind of a seasoning or salt or pepper or something. It's really delicious. So we'll go over some more examples like that too. But take a look here and try to see if you can come up with a way that you could devise a 30-gram protein breakfast for yourself. Okay, so here's one that I came up with. This is something I actually ate this today for breakfast, so it was delicious. So, like 2 scrambled eggs or an omelet if you prefer, and then adding some egg whites too, because the egg whites are pure protein. The eggs are part fat, part protein, but the egg whites are just pure protein and they're very low calorie. So, that's a good thing to throw in with your eggs. By themselves, they don't taste like much, but if you're adding them with the eggs and then you're throwing in some spinach and some salt and pepper, it's delicious. So I really recommend doing that. And then also I had a half cup of oatmeal just cooked in water and then a little bit of olive oil to add to it. And I throw some cinnamon in there too. That's really delicious. So this comes to 400 calories and 27 grams of protein. So another thing you could do is 2 scrambled eggs with the egg whites, make it like an omelet. Or you can do, like I said, scrambled omelet or scrambled, and then maybe like a piece of fruit on the side. It could be anything. Citrus goes well with eggs because it helps with the iron absorption that's in the egg, the vitamin C in the fruit. And then also we could have like a piece of, not a piece, a cup of milk or a dairy side, like a Greek yogurt or something like that. So if you did that, that would come to about 400 calories, 30 grams of protein. Another one you could do is scrambled egg with some egg whites and then maybe a little bit of avocado. You could mash it up and spread it on the bread. Then you've got kind of like a little avocado sandwich and a couple slices of a good healthy whole grain bread. So like Ezekiel bread or Dave's Killer bread. And then also maybe a piece of citrus or any other fruit on the side. Berries are really good too. Maybe a cup of blueberries on the side instead. But that would come to about 400 calories, 24 grams of protein. Another option is my mom called it hen's nest, but I've heard other people call it or eggs in a basket. So this is really good too. You could have, like I said, a couple slices of sprouted grain or whole grain bread, like Ezekiel bread or Dave's Killer bread. Those are really good. You could kind of use a cup to cut a hole in the middle. Then you can put the egg in the middle, and it's really delicious. Put some salt and pepper on top of it. And then you could have with that maybe some cottage cheese and like a little mandarin orange or a little bit of berries or something like that. That's going to come to about 400 calories, 32 grams of protein too. Another one, this is another one I have a lot too. So make a little egg white omelet, just add some salt and pepper. It's really good. I do like it a lot. And then cream of rice. That's really easy on your stomach too if you have any gut issues. And putting a little bit of olive oil and salt and pepper in there. And then like a Greek yogurt or skyr. The skyr is the Icelandic Greek yogurt. Siggi's is a really good one. It's very low sugar and there's only a few ingredients in those. You can find those at Publix, and then maybe some berries with it too. And that would come to 400 calories, 28 grams of protein. And then this is my last one. I like to do this on the weekend when I have a little extra time. So I make protein pancakes. They're really good. So I'll find a gluten-free flour. The one I like the best, I use oat flour a lot, and almond flour is good too. You could do rice flour. I have tried coconut flour before, and it was too crumbly, I guess. It's really delicious, but it's kind of crumbly. The pancakes didn't really stay together well. So I would go with like oat, almond, or rice flour, and then throwing an egg and some egg whites in there, a little bit of milk, mix it up, add some cinnamon and some vanilla extract to give it a good taste. And then I like to put like either bananas or blueberries with it too. And they're really delicious, very high protein. Another thing you could even do too, if you want to make it really high protein, throw some protein powder in there too. So throw in like some chocolate protein powder, vanilla protein powder. That would give it a little bit more sweetness and it gives it a good texture too. So if you did that, you would get even much more than 27 grams of protein. But these come to about 400 calories, 27 grams of protein if you make it this way. All right. So thank you for joining us today. My next steps for you would be to, first of all, if you have no idea what your protein intake is, which a lot of people don't, go ahead and start recording it. You could just write it on paper, or you could use an app like MyFitnessPal to track it, but just get a sense for how many grams of protein you're actually eating on a real day without influencing it. Just see what you've been doing. And usually people are pretty shocked to see that it's coming so far under what their actual protein intake should be. So just do a normal day for you, just track it and see what it comes out to. And I think you'll be really surprised. And then once you see that, if you do need to add more protein, start small by changing one meal at a time. I would definitely encourage you to start with breakfast. Use some of those suggestions that I just gave you. Definitely don't be afraid to include eggs and egg whites. And just try to get that high protein breakfast where you're getting 30 plus grams of protein for breakfast. And if you have any questions or if you wanted to look at your InBody to see what your lean mass is or anything like that, don't be afraid to ask. We're all happy to help you. And I think I have here's my card too, if you'd like to reach out. So you can call or text me at this number or email me at this email address too, if you'd like some extra help or if you have any questions. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful day. See you next time.